Aryan Romulus.
Damien Fondulus.
Alien communist.
Welcome back to Hollywood Impact. My name is Christian, and this is Caleb.
My name is Christian, and this is Caleb.
No, don't believe him. But what if he's right?
Hello, Christian.
We have yet to do this, I think. This is the first time that you and I have done... Yeah, a one-on-one.
Yes.
A long time ago, we had done Dungeons and Dragons for like a podcast I used to do like way back in the day. I say way back in the day, it was like a year ago. Yeah. But anyways, but today we are going to be talking about the new Alien Romulus.
Yes.
I about said it wrong just because of the intro. The Alien Romulus. And so let's go ahead and get started. What were some things you liked about the movie?
Okay, so there were a couple. There were quite a few. I would say just like overall, I did enjoy the movie.
Okay.
Overall, good movie.
Good.
I think one of the very first things that I noticed was the visuals and the sound design paired with them.
Was really good.
Very good. There were a couple of visuals at the very beginning of the movie that I really enjoyed. A couple of shots like from space with cool angles that were just very visually pleasing. And then, like I said, the audio as well. The very beginning, totally silent. You could hear the projector whirring in the background of the theater.
You could hear the silence.
Yes, you could hear the sound of silence too.
The silence was so loud.
Yes, and so that was really good. That was something that I liked. What else I liked? It held the atmosphere very well. It didn't ever feel like there were any scenes that were misplaced emotionally. It always felt the storyline was solid. I didn't see any major plot holes or anything crazy happen. And I mean, I like sci-fi movies, so just all the space stuff, just in general. You know, they had some cool technologies that I don't think have been mentioned or were only mentioned lightly in other movies. So that was cool. But yeah, what about you?
Space good.
Space good.
Space good.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with all those points. I also really liked how many practical effects they used. They used a lot more practical effects than I was anticipating. I knew like I had read some article or probably some post on Instagram about how like, oh, they want to kind of bring it back to the style of the original. And I thought that was really cool. And it didn't feel too derivative of, like it did not feel like the same movie like at all. And I think that surely worked in its favor. It took me a while to actually get down the name of the protagonist. Her name's Rain. Pretty sure.
I think so.
Like 99% sure. So her relationship with Andy, who's one of the other main characters, who's a synth, was a really good like driving point for the film. And I think that adding that kind of humanistic element to it definitely, for sure, helped with the tension of the situations.
One other thing I want to mention that I really enjoyed was the performances themselves.
Yeah.
I thought everybody involved did a really good job. My favorite, honestly, was the android, was Andy.
He did really good. Absolutely.
There were multiple times in the movie where I was like, whoa, that's like his facial expressions, perfect for an android, because it felt like what I would picture a very advanced android to be. Very good at expressing human emotions, but still with that hint of mechanical, you know, that underlying mechanicalness.
It kind of like dips into like the uncanny valley just a little bit.
There were a few times, where that happened.
It's like you know they're acting, but it's like it borders on that line between real and fake.
Yeah, especially like with his eyebrows moving, how they did, and his smile. Both of those things, I would watch him, and it almost felt like it was just super good CGI.
Yes,
and that was just him. So phenomenal on his part, I thought.
And as the story goes on, you know, as things are happening, seeing him like switch like back and forth between like different modes of sorts. No spoilers. Very good job. He did a very good job of being able to portray like not emotion, but like a different style of acting.
It was almost like he was switching characters.
Almost,
yeah.
I mean, the best one I've ever seen in that scenario is James McAvoy from Split. That's like one of the best, like multi-character things I've ever seen. But this is this is up there with him, I think. I think they did a good job with the intensity.
Yes. Yeah.
The atmosphere was very creepy, and you were sitting in the theater like right next to me, so you could hear the few moments where I was like, Nope.
Yep. Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't go in there.
Yeah, the pacing was pretty dang good. I think there was only one point at in like the first third of the movie where I started to get a little bored.
I agree.
And then it was just like 2 minutes after I started feeling that where the action kicked in, and I was like, okay, that wasn't too bad. They picked that up. So
I think that when they're all kind of meeting each other, sort of on the ship, they're getting ready to like take off to their destination. That was the moment where I'm like, okay, we gotta pick this up a bit. And they were pretty clear and concise. It's a simple story. It's not super complex.
Yeah,
it has some complex things based on the universe kind of near the end, but for the most part, it's a pretty contained story.
Yeah.
And I think that it does a good job of saying, okay, well, we can't just throw more for no reason, because there is like more aliens, there's more stuff in here, but they don't sacrifice the tension because of that.
They kept it pretty trim.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say bare bones necessarily, but it seemed like it was just the right amount of fluff.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Was there anything in particular that you didn't like about this movie, besides the pacing that we just mentioned?
Right. There were two particular scenes in the movie where I noticed the CGI, because there's CGI, of course, all throughout the movie. But there were two scenes in particular, and one sort of repeating scene. There is, I'll try not to go into spoiler territory. There were multiple scenes with an android, and you know which I'm referring to. The face, I couldn't quite tell if they were going for a malfunctioning android that just had little glitches, or if it was just CGI that didn't pan out super well. I couldn't. So it was sort of in that valley of, is it supposed to look weird, or did they just maybe not have enough time, or did they just mess up on it or something? One part in particular, I was like, I was looking at his teeth, and I saw his teeth like jittering, like out of socket. So I was like, that's not right.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. And then there was one scene at the very end of the movie, the climax, where she's in the suit. And that I could tell that she wasn't in a real suit. They had just put her face in the visor thing.
I agree.
Yeah. So those two, I didn't like that part of the visuals. Like you said, the pacing already, just for that little couple of minutes closer to the beginning. And then I think there was a little bit of predictability. So I have seen a couple of the other Alien movies, and of course I know the plots anyways, because they're such a cultural icon. Everybody knows the Alien movies.
Yeah.
So it did feel like basically every step of the way, there was nothing that really surprised me too terribly much. There was oh man, how do I say this without spoiling? You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
That was interesting. That was kind of an unknown that I thought was a new development. But everything else, I mean, it kind of ties back to just, it's a very trim story. But I feel like they could have done maybe a couple of more twists and turns if they were careful with it. It's just, it felt to me like I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, there was only like one thing in the movie that they did that was necessarily like original.
Yeah.
That was, and I hesitate to say original because we can't spoil it just yet, but that was pretty cool. But even like leading up to that point, there were points where it was hinted at. Yeah. And other than that, everything else is pretty standard. Like if you've seen the first two Alien films, like you're gonna understand what's happening. Yeah. Like from
because it wasn't just it was not like the Prometheus movies where it's an entirely different setting with an almost entirely different storyline. Yeah. But in the same universe and revolving around some of the same stuff. Yes. This was just, it felt like another addition to. I mean, it takes place between Alien 1 and Aliens, the second one. Correct. And it felt just like it was not quite a carbon copy, but very heavily inspired by those other two.
Yes. Yeah. There are ties like to, I think there's more ties to Prometheus in this movie than the first Alien movie, and I think it's because the first Alien movie is such a simple movie that, I mean, just the entire film is like has a very basic structure.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to say, well, it's, it takes some inspiration from the original. It's like, well, duh, because the original has a very standard set story, and it's easy to take elements from that. But I think that what it did with certain things in Prometheus was actually pretty cool, and we'll get to that whenever we get into spoilers here pretty quick. But overall, I think that this is a pretty solid film, and I think, just personally, I think the story, I think the movie kind of got better as it went along. The more the movie went along, I found myself getting a little bit more invested in the characters.
Yes, I think I'd agree with that too.
I agree with your nitpicks, but I think one that I would add on to that is, and this is a personal one, so take this with a grain of salt. But I am not a big fan of just like the annoying character, like the character that just has to be like a D-bag just because. Not my favorite trope. And I feel like that's always like a forced thing in horror films, because it's always like, oh, here's the guy that's just, he talks smack, or he's just super dumb, and all he does is just be mean to everyone, because we all know his role, and I'm not a big fan of that. But that's pretty much it. Everything else here was pretty cool, and there were some scenes where I'm like, that's pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie. I would just like advise not doing any of this.
Not worth it.
From the get-go, if someone says, hey, we're going to do this and we'll be out in 30 minutes, I'm like, no. If they ever say, oh, it'll just be a quick job.
It's an in and out, easy peasy.
It's like, don't do that. Red flag numero.
Yes.
Hate that.
Well, we need like a Morgan Freeman narrator, like, in and out, easy peasy. It was not easy peasy.
It was not in and out, easy peasy. But I'm ready to give it a score if you are.
I think I am as well.
Sweet. And then we'll go into spoilers.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and give this an 8. I think it's really solid.
Okay.
And I base a lot of this off of, can I rewatch this film and still enjoy it? I can. Because even though maybe the scares won't be as effective, I like the story that they had set.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm going to give it a 7. And the 1 point reduction is almost the exact opposite reason that you gave for an 8, is because I don't think I could rewatch it.
Okay.
Well, like I said, one of my nitpicks that I didn't like, for me at least, was that it was a little too predictable. Like I said, there weren't any huge surprises, which we'll kind of get into what I mean by that in a moment. But I feel like if I watched it again, it didn't have it. Like you said, there were a couple moments that were scary, and sure, there were a couple of moments that were sort of scary, but not scary enough for me to. It didn't elicit enough of a reaction for me.
It's just creepy, just nasty.
Right. So yeah, but I give it a 7. So it was good, solid, no fluff, good movie.
Let's get into spoilers.
Yes.
Let's get into spoiler territory.
Okay.
So, what do you want to tackle first?
I want to tackle the kind of
the director.
No, I want to tackle the thread that kind of followed all the way, basically from the start of the movie all the way to the very climax finish of the movie, which I forget her name. They probably only mentioned it like once or twice.
Probably.
Pregnant lady. Right. We don't know that she's pregnant until they're like up in space and they've like just boarded the Romulus while the ladies are staying behind.
Yes.
And that's when pregnant lady tells Rain, our main character, that she's pregnant, right? And the moment she like had the hand on the stomach, it was an immediate, okay, so aliens are going to somehow compromise her baby.
Yes.
There was no doubt about that in my mind. Something is going to happen like that. And every step of the way basically confirmed that. There was the moment where they stabbed her and they drug her away, you know? That was the only point where I was a little uncertain. You know, I thought at that moment I was thinking, okay, maybe they just made her pregnant so that it feels like more of a loss when the aliens get to her, and it raises the stakes like, oh crap, these are serious killers, they just killed a pregnant lady.
Yep.
That was the only time that I was a little concerned, but then they found her like 15 minutes later, you know, stuck up against the wall, and I was like, okay, so they have changed her baby somehow. And then all the way at the end, you know, crazy alien baby. I was like, I saw this coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was cool. Like the way they did the practical effects and the body horror stuff was all pretty freaky. It was all pretty cool. Because from her womb is this like egg thing. It's kind of like a half, I mean, it's obviously half human, half xenomorph, but like, sorry from grossing you out. Womp womp. But no, it was really interesting because I didn't really know exactly how like the birthing was gonna the birthing was going to play out,
right.
And it was pretty gross.
It was pretty gross,
but I give them credit because they did a lot of like body horror stuff that is, I mean, obviously a little just hard to watch, and in most cases I think it's unnecessary. But in this franchise, I think it adds.
That's one of the linchpins.
It adds to the intensity.
I think for me, I will agree wholeheartedly that yes, the body horror was creepy and it was a cool, interesting take. But to me, it's sort of, they're starting to kind of feel just like Pokemon. Sort of just like they've got some guy in a design room, at Nintendo, who's just spitting out Pokemon designs over and over again. And it feels like they've just got that on a smaller scale for the Alien movies, right? Because, of course, with the very first Alien movies, they just had the regular aliens, like the warriors, and then the queen, right? That was basically it. And then they came out with like the Deacons, and they had the Predator and Alien movies where they got the Predaliens. Yeah. And they had the one where I think there was a dog that got infected, and there was like a quadruped xenomorph, stuff like that. And then this movie, they just added, I guess they had the rat for like almost alien sort of kind of, but it wasn't quite the same thing. But then they had the human xenomorph hybrid thing, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But it wasn't anything where I was like, egad,
my gosh.
So
my liege,
my liege, a monstrosity. But so that was again, it just kind of adds to the whole predictability thing. For me, it just felt like, another Pokemon, another alien variety. We could have seen that coming.
I think it's because since they try to invent something new, so the audience can differentiate it from the rest of them and not just another alien stalks a ship sort of movie. Which I think is fine. It was still cool, but I think that like they're trying to add all these layers into the complexity of this one creature, and that eventually it's going to burn itself out. Because you have like the dog xenomorph, and then you have like the weird alien human hybrid, not from this one, but from Alien Resurrection, which was super freaking weird. Then you have the new alien human hybrid thing. Then you have, all the engineers, and then you have the different ones from Alien Covenant. And I feel like at this point we've gone away from like the simple, like alien specifically bred with humans for the purpose of just breeding and killing.
I feel like if they want to continue forward with the Alien series, I don't think they should make a new variant of the Alien movies any sort of a major role. I think there should be some sort of a story difference. And it's fine, I think, if they do have variations of the xenomorph going forward. I just don't think they should make that like a major plot point. That should just be something that is also happening in the movie. Because I think at this point, like you said, they've kind of exhausted that trope of just new alien type. Because like when I learned about like the Predator Alien movies and I saw like the Predaliens, that my first thought was, holy crap, this is awesome. And like while I was watching some recaps of the Alien movies earlier today, and they were going through the list of them, there were a couple of them where I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. And now I think they've gotten to the end of that track.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll cut this fluff out later. I was just thinking, I literally just had my thought, and then it poof. Yeah. I feel like in the next like writer's room, someone is going to be in the corner. It's like,
crab alien,
cat alien,
Catalian,
and eventually you're just going to run out of animals. So, but like, I don't want to see that happen.
Right.
I don't want as you said, I don't want a new variant every single time. I would rather tell like different stories, which is why Prometheus was I think a really good movie. Because it's set in the same universe, but it kind of changes our understanding.
Right.
And I think that was worth exploring.
Yes, I agree.
But I think eventually you're going to have to call it on this franchise. I don't think this franchise has a ton left in the tank, especially if they keep doing it the way they're doing it, because a lot of them just take place on a ship. And when some of them don't, like Alien Covenant, they had more like philosophical things behind it. When they had Alien 3 took place in a prison on some planet, which was weird. That movie wasn't like super good. So I think that unless you're going to try to take them to a new place with like a new atmosphere that makes sense. I think that if you just keep doing the aliens in a ship, eventually your audience is just going to get burned out, because they're just going to be like, oh, well, it's just another person finds another abandoned ship that has an alien, and then they're the only last survivor. And they leave. So
I agree 100%. It does feel like, if they do want to move forward with the franchise, absolutely they're going to have some story differences. Maybe they scale it up so it's more of a, I don't know if like they could pull off an action movie where it's like a big onslaught of aliens versus. Yeah, I don't know if that would fit in this sort of context. I feel like going more the route of the Prometheus movies, where it's a bit more philosophical and strange and weird and almost maybe not quite Lovecraftian, but sort of
mysteries of the universe.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, kind of in that realm of spooky and weird and strange, as opposed to, big action fight scene, scary and in ship.
Jump scare, gore.
Yeah, right. So.
I agree. But do you have any other closing remarks before we...
Closing remarks, I would say overall, it's a well-made movie, minimal fluff. They kept the story pretty straightforward, and I think it was worth paying the money for it. Don't think I'll be watching it again anytime soon.
I think when it comes out in streaming, I will probably watch it again, maybe for like a Halloween thing. I think it's within the right theme, within the right time of year. I think it'd be a pretty good movie. It's definitely better than some of the other movies in the franchise. There's actually a really cool scene with zero gravity. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. But other than that, I think that it's just a good time.
Yeah.
So, but thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a good rest of your day.